Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another live recording of Should I Start a Podcast? If you want the edited version of this show, go to Should I Start a Podcast on all your favorite podcast platforms, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you listen to your podcasts, and look for Should I Start a Podcast by me, Ronsley, and you'll get a whole range of amazing tactics, ingenious hacks when it comes to using your podcast to grow your business. If you're a business owner, podcaster, and have a story on how you used your business or your podcast to grow your business, or maybe you've started a podcast and it's hindered your business in some way, I'd love to hear from you. I'd love a case study to be able to interview you on what's happened and how it's gone down. So DM me about that. If you didn't know, We Are Podcast 2022 is on this year for our 9th iteration. It's Australia's first podcasting conference, started way back in 2015. The who's who of podcasting has been here and spoken, from Jordan Harbinger to John Lee Dumas to Pat Flynn to Melissa Ambrosini, and some amazing humans. So go check it out, wearepodcast.com. If you agree or disagree with anything that we say on this show, I'd love to hear that in the comments. I'd love to be able to understand what kind of content you'd like me to create for you as a business owner and a podcaster. Today, I have a treat. Like every other recording, I have Phoebe Greenacre in the house, and she is the host of a really cool show called Consciously Alive. Now, she does a whole range of things, from being a somatic therapist to a meditation and yoga teacher, a business coach, and obviously a podcaster. I want to get into her story on how she went around creating this, but also how she is traveling the world and doing some cool stuff. So, Phoebe, welcome to the show. Really good to have you. How has your journey as a podcaster impacted your journey as a business owner?
Yeah, thank you so much for having me here. It's a pleasure. So my podcast is just 1 year old, just 1 year old. So last June, I was traveling from Kenya to Bali, and I had to quarantine in a hotel for a week. And I thought, what a perfect idea or perfect time to start my podcast. I'd always wanted to start a podcast. I love interviewing people. About 9 years, I did a TV presenting course and focused on interviewing. So I love interviewing. I love hearing people's stories. And I feel like it's the stories that really help inspire my clients to really go after their dreams, live outside the box, and really break the rules of society and kind of just light up their own path to what makes them feel happy and content and be glowing inside and out, business, body, and mind. So, yeah.
No, that's cool. So when you were thinking in that hotel room, I'm going to start a podcast, what went through your mind, and what did you do? What was your first hour like? Like, what did you write down, or what did you get into play before you started moving, and starting recording?
Yeah, so for this business that I have now, I've been an entrepreneur for about 9 years. I started this new business in 2020, so I'd been thinking about it for about a year, but I really took my time to feel out, like, what was my message, what was I going to say on this podcast? Because I think that's a lot of people's issues when they want to start, is like, actually, what is it going to be about? And so I really, over the year of working with clients and seeing this new kind of, my new niche kind of evolving and my message getting clearer, I kind of pre-planned everything. So when I got to the hotel, I actually had 10 episodes booked in for that week. And I already had the logo designed. I already had the cover happening. And so I kind of just dove straight into recording. So I guess the months leading up to moving to Bali, I was planning, who I wanted to have on the show, what did those conversations look like, and how was I integrating the title Consciously Alive into that storytelling, to really help women remember that they don't need to follow the rules to create a life that lights them up. So does that answer your question?
Yeah. I mean, I love the way you've kind of broken it down, and you're speaking to a certain type of audience, which is obviously key. Let's talk about business before we get into the podcast world. So, You've been doing this for 9 years. What are your learnings as a business owner? How did you start? And where are you at right now if you had to give someone a highlight reel?
Yeah, so my background is 10 years in corporate marketing. So when I first quit my job when I was 29 in Sydney, I used to work for David Jones in the marketing department. And I quit my job and really had really no idea, structure, plan, or anything. I was like living on a prayer. And I started consulting businesses, but in the wellness space, because that was where my passions lie. So for the next year, 2 years, that's kind of what I did. In the meantime, I went through a huge breakup and a huge kind of like, I suppose, a Saturn return, if anyone's into astrology listening. And I packed up my whole entire life, sold everything, and bought a one-way ticket to London. So when I landed in London, I realized that I didn't have the network I had had in Sydney of being in corporate for 10 years. So I went and took a contract role, another marketing role in London in the wellness space, so that I could really get my teeth into contacts and create build a network for me. So that then turned into me becoming a yoga teacher, a somatic therapist, as well as creating an activewear brand called Silu London, which is an international brand. It's been going for about 5 years now. I stepped down from the business and sold it last year. So I'm no longer active CEO, but I am still shareholder. So that business, yeah, just wasn't lighting me up anymore. And this is when I stepped into more of what I do now, which is healing, somatic therapy, and business coaching. And I suppose the highlight reel now is that last month I did like more than 100 grand in 1 month. And that was like a highlight, because that did not happen in my first year of business when I first quit my job. So the possibility of having that, I just never knew that that was possible for me.
Yeah, yeah.
And now, as I think that the lessons I have, I think you asked about lessons, is that I always let go of things that no longer light me up. And like creating the activewear brand in London, we were sold in Selfridges, Soul Cycle, Equinox, Gwyneth Paltrow's Goop, internationally, like America, London, all throughout the world, actually. But I had to actively say, no, this doesn't serve me anymore, to then follow this next chapter, which the universe keeps on rewarding me with more abundance, with more success, because I am following the light inside and what's lighting me up. And that's what I help women do, is to follow the light inside them, to follow a dream career that really lights them up.
So how does one, I mean, I know you talk to women, but I'm sure this applies to most people, and this is the Ronsley therapy show. So let's give Ronsley some therapy. How does someone know that that's the light? Like, how do you start paying attention to that voice? I mean, I feel like there are different voices inside me from the different experiences I've been through. Sometimes it's the mind, sometimes it's the heart, sometimes it's the gut. Like, how do you sort of distinguish those different voices, and how do you pay attention to the right one?
Yeah, so I guess if something's feeling hard, like you don't want to go to this meeting or do this thing, and it's, you don't find joy in the projects that you're doing anymore, then that's a little sign to say, hey, maybe this isn't right for me anymore. And I know, with like, coming from, my parents were baby boomers kind of era, and they kind of had one job or one career their whole life. And I suppose being, this next generation, um, it's okay to change. And so, letting go of the things that don't light you up anymore, and being brave enough to start over. And that's the scary thing that most people don't want to do. I started over at 30, started over again at 36, with all of these different career changes. Is that it is possible to change your career when you're, way into your 30s or 40s or 50s. I work with clients all throughout, those type of age brackets, and it's about following the light. If you don't feel lit up by the clients you work with, they don't excite you, the work doesn't excite you, then you're not in the right space.
I mean, I'm totally on board with you on careers, right? I've had 7 different careers: financial advisor, chef, restaurateur, software engineer, whatever I am now, everything in between, and 100% like changing careers is definitely should be on the cards because you get a chance to like experience some really cool stuff. When it comes to like understanding what's next, how do you kind of decide? Because for me, I'm an athlete. Growing up as an athlete, I've been trained not to give up. I'm trained to, when my back's against the wall, to keep fighting. How do someone like myself kind of understand when it's time to like go on to the next thing? Because here's the story, right? My first business was a restaurant, and my wife keeps telling me quite often, it's lucky that they shut the restaurant down for you because you would still be there trying to make it work. And it's true because I don't know. I mean, like I said, I've been trained not to give up. So how does someone like myself try to like, separate these different voices that I have inside me and kind of pay attention to the right one?
Yeah, for sure. So that program is something that I would talk about on Consciously Alive, is like noticing that that is a program that has been installed in you and choosing to unlearn it, choosing to say, this does not serve me anymore. Like pushing yourself again and again and again. Like it's insanity. I think it's Einstein's quote of like doing the same thing but expecting a different result. Like if it's not getting the results you want, you either got to do something different or, jump off the ship. I'm definitely not someone that says, starting a new business and after 3 months, if you don't like it, give up. Like, no, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that if you've been doing something for years and it's no longer bringing you joy, life is short. You could get hit by a bus. Do something that lights you up. Because life is way too short to be head banging your head against something that's just giving you all of, keeping you up at night.
Sure. So let's talk about this. You started the podcast a year ago. What other results have you seen from doing the reps for the last year? I mean, obviously, you talk about the conversations that you're having, and you've always liked to have these conversations and get people's stories. What kind of results are you seeing as a consequence of you having a podcast?
Yeah, so it's definitely helping with the conversion type part of it. So I have a conscious business school, which helps women start up their online business in wellness, so their
Yeah.
first business. And people, when they like fill out the application form, and they like end up joining, they're like, oh, I listened to your podcast for 6 months, and then I realized like I was getting in my own way, so signed up to the course. So it really has that helped that in that know, like, trust and buy marketing kind of model, is it really has helped the trust section, because you can see, I'm quite active on Instagram. You can go and watch my reels or go and read my posts. You can see on my website, be part of my newsletter. But once you listen to me speak for an hour every single week, asking the same questions and, getting to the depths of like why people change their lives and how they've become successful at doing that, people start to trust you really innately. And, people say, oh my God, I feel like you're in my car every day when I drive to work. I feel like I know you, like, and you get that kind of that trust that you can't get from an Instagram post or from an email newsletter. It's a different layer of being in someone's subconscious, really.
And so do you interview people on your show? You said you do. And is there a tactic in terms of how you pick the people to interview? Is there a reason for picking them?
Yeah. So normally I'm inspired by their life or their work has impacted me directly. So,
Got it.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So it'll either be someone that is living a life outside the matrix,
Mm.
that has left the corporate world and started a new wellness, like business and wellness, or they've left the confines of living in the city, paying high rents and mortgages and being a slave to the city life
Yeah.
and kind of skipped that and gone to somewhere where you can live much cheaper, create an online business and have freedom and flexibility and, time
Right.
back. So yeah, they're the kind of the types of people that I interview. Is like I'm inspired by their life, or their work has directly impacted me.
Have you thought of interviewing the people who have your target market and no competitive overlap? Like, have you thought of interviewing potential partners on your show that you can potentially get in front of their audiences? And have you done that at all?
Yeah, I guess like most of the people, we do have similar clients. So the clients that are listening to their shows, or maybe, or are in their like audience, are potentially going to be great to listen. And a lot of people have come in from, other people's interviews,
Yeah.
come into the funnel and then like loved
Yeah.
the episode and
Yeah.
then like gone back and binged like 40
Of
episodes
course.
and
Of
then
course.
is going to be a loyal, part of my audience for
Yeah.
sure.
And that community building is so important, right? You're building the community as opposed to building the client base, which is the
Yeah.
difference. Let's talk about what you do before you start recording, right? So what do you do before you start recording, and what do you do when you hit record? What are your um, what is on your checklist to get done before and during the record session?
Yeah, so normally when I interview someone, I know them already. Like, not that I know them personally, but I know their story. I know what they do. I know what they offer. I've been inspired by them. So I really let that inspiration drive the conversation. I have a list of questions that I kind of know off by heart now, but I also am trying to get to the root. Um, I don't know, the root kind of inspiration or motivation of how and why they did what they did. And like, how did they find the bravery to do what they did? Because a lot of my clients are in corporate jobs, or they're in full time work, and they're just so scared. They're so riddled with fear of having a scarcity mindset and not being able to pay rent or mortgage or whatever that is. So, really finding those advice, like the bits and pieces of advice from my guest.
Yeah.
To really, because I can go on my show every week and say the same thing about take the risk, make the jump, invest in yourself. But when you hear it from like 10, 20, 30, 40 other women that have a successful freedom-based lifestyle, it's not just me saying the same thing, it's other people saying the same thing. So
Hmm.
it starts to be like, oh, yeah. And I also interview clients who have gone through my program who have gone from zero to hero, and have been the listener listening to my podcast, crying on their way to work and thinking, I will never be like Phoebe. This is so out of touch for me. Then a year later, them being on the show and saying, I'm having 5-figure months. I quit my 9 to 5. I now travel around the world doing my business. And like, I'm here to tell you that just after 1 year, it is possible.
Hmm.
I was the girl here listening to the podcast, and now I'm on the podcast. So those ones are super powerful, because they're just everyday people that have changed their lives in less than a year.
Yeah.
And that's really, really inspiring for, the listeners at home.
Hmm. Um, I think in any situation, any community, feeling like you're not alone is probably the best thing you could potentially do for that community, right? And the podcast allows some great conversations and great stories to happen as a result of just sharing what you've been through. You mentioned that you focus on first-time business owners that in the health and well-being space. Let's talk about business, because a lot of people start podcasts without the idea of the business part of it, or how
Mm.
to get the podcast to work with the business. And I feel like the basics might be a good place to spend a few minutes on. What are the basics for a business owner, first time business owner that are starting out? Like, how do
Mm.
you take this value that you kind of know you have and put it out into the world to get someone to pay you money for it?
Yeah. So I guess like I'll talk about my program, which is a
Yep.
12-week, 90-day, business accelerator. The difference is between a a standard business program that you might sign up to mine is that we do a conscious healing program in the same simultaneously as you're building your business. So you're working through your money blockages, your mindset blockages. I've interweaved my somatic therapy parts through the business program. so that you're equally healing the childhood wounds, you're healing the things that teachers, parents, people, bullies have said to you, that is stopping you from getting online, that's stopping you from putting your services out there, that's stopping you kind of creating your success whilst doing personal branding, building your website, building your funnels, creating all of those kind of strategy side of things. So it's a very beautiful mixture of feminine and masculine energies, which I think has been like a real huge pivotal point for my healing journey and also my business journey. I would not be here without all of the healing modalities that I've now retrained in. I've been retraining for 9 years. And I combine that with my business experience of building brands, exiting brands, launching, consulting, that kind of thing. So it's a real kind of mixture. And I think people really get the results there as well, because you can be taught all of the web, this is how you build a website, this is how you create an offer, this is how you create packages. But then actually getting out there and selling it is a whole different part of like the confidence that you need to build and nurture and really work on to allow yourself to really shine.
So how did you come to this point where you decided it was a 12-week accelerator to give that kind of transformation, and you putting all your mountains of value into this program to create it this way? What was the evolution? Did it always start as a 12-week? Was it something else before? What was it like?
Okay. It started as a 10-week and then I added more content. So I made it longer. And then so it's been going for about 2.5 years now. And then at one point I made a 12-month program, which didn't go down too well. I sold like one round of it as a 12-month program, but like, nah, that's it. No, like a very small people signed up. So I realized like I've been kind of marinating and massaging the offer and getting clearer as it goes through, as I go through each round or each kind of client, and I change and add and edit. But right now, I feel like we just had the biggest cohort ever sign up last month. So I really feel like I'm nailing or really speaking to my ideal client now. And the 90 days, like the 12-week container, is not too long for a corporate girl or corporate woman that it doesn't feel too overwhelming. They can do it on the side. And if they want, they can launch their business within 3 months. So those impatient people that want to do it overnight, they can come in. 3 months goes really quickly.
Yep.
And yeah, so that's kind of how I got it to where it was. From the beginning, my unique selling point was always we did a chakra healing journey as well as the business building journey. And people that have gone through it have said it's like a mini MBA with a like deep dive 3 months self-discovery therapy tool. So people are doing like intense therapy on themselves because a lot of the therapy side is in their own time.
Yeah.
I also have a healing platform called the Self-Care Space, which is Netflix for emotional healing.
Yeah.
And so I combine that and give them prescriptions to do in that platform every week that matches with what they're doing in their business. So it's quite a 360-degree kind of process.
Yeah, amazing. I want to get into your offer, but before that, I want to ask you, how do you land up selling? So what's your launch process like to have the cohort join? What do you do before and what do you do during the selling process?
Yeah, so probably I take a month before a new cohort is going to start. It's quite I mean, I'm always talking about and selling it and that kind of thing. It's not something that I'm like, I'm on, I'm off, I'm on, I'm off. So about a month, I do a few free masterclasses leading up in that month. And yeah, and then I'm pretty active on Instagram. So I'm active on Instagram. I'm emailing my database. And that's kind of the three kind of ways I'm doing. I'm also doing ads to the masterclass because that helps to widen my reach in terms of new customers. A lot of the time, people come in for the free masterclass and they stay in my funnel for 6 months, and they do like 6 masterclasses for
Mm,
free before they end up converting. So
mm,
there's a bit of a longer conversion
mm.
period, but the podcast helps them to convert faster
Yeah,
because they trust me sooner.
of course, of course. Let's talk about the offer for a second. So, what is the offer right now, and how are you delivering that for them to understand that? Oh yeah, I want to put money against this. Like how? What are the questions that are roadblocks for them, and how do you address them in the offer, or do you address them in the offer?
Yeah, so some roadblocks are I can't afford it, um, and I have a payment plan. Other things like so, I suppose I'm going to go around the other way. Is when I interview them, because
Yeah.
I don't approve everyone that comes into the application process. So I'm very much like, this is my energy. I'm super protective of the container and the women that are inside it.
Mm-hmm.
I so when they apply, they have to book in a one to like a face to face with me, and through that application process, I ask them, do they have the time each week? Do they have 2 to 3 hours each week to commit? Can they show up for the live call every fortnight? Are they going to be participating in the Facebook group? Because that's super important. And also, like, how long have they been thinking about creating this business? And also, is it a now thing? Is this priority? Is this what you want to put your money, your time, and your energy into? And do you have the energy for it? Because this is an accelerator. This is like an intense 3 months journey, and I need your full commitment. Otherwise, you waste my time, you waste the other girl's time, you waste your money. It's not going to be worth it. And I want to get results. So rather than like trying to sell the offer, I'm and like answering their questions. That's how I kind of filter out the or qualify who like can come into the program.
So you're kind of having these interviews all the time, and this is really funny. You're saying all this. It's not funny, but it's. I remember I've been doing this for 10 years more, and I used to tell people that they need to start a podcast, and they would be like, "You're an idiot." Like, there's so many things that I have to worry about in my business, and you're telling me to start a podcast. And then I would say, I think you need a storyteller using audio, and they would think about it and still tell me that I was an idiot. But then I finally came across this idea that every conversion in any business happens in a conversation, whether you're getting a team member on board, a client on board, a partner on board. And I would be like, what if you recorded some of those conversations? And they went, oh, so I should start a podcast. And that literally, that line got me to $1 million company. It's that just getting that one line sorted. And that's why I started talking about the offer, because it's such an important part about that value exchange of what your people are looking for. You mentioned something initially about showing up and why we stop ourselves from putting ourselves out there. And I think that's something that we constantly deal with, myself included. How does one deal with those things? Like, what do we can we reframe it? Is there an exercise that we can go through before, after, during? Because I think showing up is one of those things that we have no problem doing, but for some reason online it feels kind of different. Do you agree, disagree? What are your thoughts on that?
I love getting online, and I share this with my clients a lot. It always comes up. So people think that like there's going to be haters and judgmental people and all of these things out there. But when I get online, I really know my why. And that's like one of the first things we work on with my clients is like, what is your why? Why do you want to build this business? Why do you want to show up and share your message? How is that going to help someone? So when I think back to me being in corporate marketing, and like having 3 coffees before I even have a meal and going back to back meetings and like stressing and not, eating the healthiest and just really like drinking all weekend, as, a normal kind of Sydney corporate kind of person does. I was really unhappy. I was really unfulfilled. And I remember crying in the bathrooms. I remember not like just not feeling in alignment. And I felt so out of, of who I really was. I was like, there must be more to life than sitting under these fluorescent lights, listening to a boss that I don't agree with. And so when I get online, I'm talking to that version of myself that
Mm,
feels lost, that feels unhappy, that feels out of alignment. And so if I just reach one of those types of people, then that's fine. My job, my job is done.
Mm-hmm.
And so when my clients are suffering with imposter syndrome or feeling like who's going to listen to me, I always tell them, talk to the version of you when you're at your start of your healing journey or your wellness journey or your business journey, and speak to that version of yourself. And just one person. It doesn't
Yeah.
need to be thousands, hundreds, whatever. You don't need to have that huge reach impact. And
Yeah.
that's kind of like, what is your why? And just speak to the version of yourself that was feeling really lost at the beginning of
Such
your journey.
such good advice. I mean, I'm definitely going to take that on. There's a friend of mine who's written a really good book. His name is Philip McKernan. He's Irish and has got this Irish humor. But he says in the book, he kind of says our greatest gift lies next to our deepest wounds. And what you're doing here is literally kind of taking that and using that to help your mission, which is kind of really cool because we all want to make an impact on the planet and we all want to look good while we're doing that. So it's like, oh, I'm not going to do anything if I don't look good. So let me be perfect as long as it looks good. Let's talk about how you grow your business with the podcast. What do you do after recording stops? What happens with the podcast? How do you repurpose? What does that look like? Do you have any relationship building after that with your guests? What is that process after the recording stops?
Yeah. So my VA edits it all. We take snapshots of the video and we use that for Instagram. It gets posted on my podcast Instagram, my personal Instagram. It goes into my newsletter. I email the guest to give them all the assets, thank the guest, and yeah, and I think that's probably about it. I do kind of refer back to episodes when I'm talking about content on LinkedIn, so they're always there. But yeah, that's kind of the process. Kind of like chop up the content, make it digestible, and I share it a couple of times throughout that week when the guest is live, and then it goes into the email system as well. So. Yeah, that's kind of my process.
So you've got multiple platforms happening. Do you have a certain way of repurposing for different platforms?
Yeah, so Instagram, people like the video rather than just the audio.
Mm.
And in my email, it's a different type of graphic. So
Mm.
obviously, newsletters, you're not using
Mm.
audio kind of sections, and then it might be a quote for LinkedIn. So
Mm.
pulling out like a business quote or something that kind of speaks to my target market. So yeah, there's like graphics, quotes, titles, and then video for Instagram.
Yeah, cool. All right, I want to talk about your world before we wrap this up. And your world is all around, self-healing, success. So let's start with this. What is your definition of success now, and how has it changed over the years?
Hmm. My definition of success is having the money to do what I want and the time to do what I want with it.
Mm.
So being free to do what I want when I want, and yeah, and doing the things that make me happy and doing less of the things that don't make me happy. And right now, there's not a lot of things that don't make me happy. So I'm feeling pretty good.
What kind of rituals do you have to keep in touch with this inner self, like the part of you that's pure joy?
Yeah. I mean, daily it changes, but there's a mixture of meditation, movement, checking in with my emotional body. That's really super important. And then just, weekly or monthly check-ins or reflections of like what's worked well, what doesn't feel good, what do I want to do less of. I don't know if you know about human design, but I'm a manifesting generator. And if something's not lighting me up, I'll get bored and I'll just won't put any effort into it. So I
Mm.
really look at like, is the podcast lighting me up? And I freaking love it.
Mm.
So, I know that like when I get off an episode, whether someone interviews me on their podcast or I'm interviewing my own guests, like the joy, the goosebumps, the complete kind of like excitement and inspiration that comes from it. I'm like, oh yeah, this feels good in my body.
Yeah.
I'm very much body-based wisdom. So I'm always tuning in with my body. How does this feel? How does, and with every part of the business, like always checking in after I've done something. Because sometimes leading up to, so, I teach a live yin therapy healing class, which is the only place people can come for a live healing with me. And after, like, leading up to it, I'm like, oh, I've got this coming up. Oh, I've got this coming up. And it's, maybe it's a bit annoying, or I want to go for a sunset walk at that time. It's only once a month. But after it, oh my God, after I feel so alive, the comments that come through, the messages that come through from my clients, and I'm like, yeah, this is why I do this work.
Yeah. I mean,
So
I was
always
actually,
checking in.
I love that you mentioned this, because that was what I was trying to get at initially, is because like there are times where in the build up to something, I'm like, oh, should I do it? And then when I do it, it's like, oh, wow, exercise is a great example of that.
Yeah.
And a lot of us kind of feel it hard initially. And then if we went by the idea that it doesn't light me up at that point, we might never do it, right? So it's like, how do you distinguish between what needs to be done versus what you're finding a way out of getting to do, I suppose, was the question. And I know for a fact that there are all these things that I do that feel extremely hard. Like, I mean, I'm not the biggest fan of doing this live. I mean, I'm learning to do this live. These are like maybe um out of the 1,500 interviews I've done, this is probably maybe 30 interviews that I've done live. So I'm still sort of really learning my place in this whole live streaming world. And there's all these thoughts that come up before the live, especially when I've never met someone before, right? And it's like, how is this going to turn out live? So I love that you mentioned that checking in part, because to your point about yin, you said yin, and I lit up because I came across yin yoga at a retreat in Mallorca 4 years ago, and I've easily done over between 300 and 400 yin sessions since, and it's like the probably the best part of my day. And I start with a yin session in the morning. How can you take that yin idea into the business world? Because I think it's totally relatable, and I'll give you my version, but I'd love to hear yours. How do you take the concept of yin into business?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question. So, for anyone listening at home, yin yoga is a very restorative, very slow. You literally do maybe 5 or 6 poses in a whole hour. So the therapist or the instructor puts you into a pose, and you stay there for 5 minutes or more while your fascia, your muscles, your emotional body, physical body, mental body starts to unravel. And so it's this really deep pause and reflection and stillness. And we're not taught in this society to be in that state of being. It's a very feminine energy, whereas most of the world relies on a masculine energy: doing, thinking, creating, action. Corporate life, 9 to 5 business is very masculine, where the yin helps to rebalance our yin and yang energies, because we need both. If we don't have enough yin energy in our body, we won't be able to fall asleep. We don't know how to rest and digest. And our nervous system, our immunity, all of these things need the yin side to heal and recover and rest, recuperate in our body organ system. So bringing that into business is, it maybe looks like padding out blank space in your diary for reflection and pause. And we can look at our diary of Monday to Friday and be like, and fill it to the brim of what needs to be done. And then there's no space for pausing and reflecting and just being with our emotions, being with our mind, being with our body. And so why yin therapy has been so powerful for me personally, because it allowed, like, as a manifesting generator, my mind is business, 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 thinking ideas. I go for a massage and I come out with like a whole new program. That's how my brain works. So being in yin, is a practice, and also it's a discipline, because a lot of people won't sit still for 5 minutes in one position, and people start getting niggly, and people start want to move and shift, and because it's uncomfortable to be with all of your stuff.
Yeah.
And that's the power of yin, is to be able to hold and have capacity for your mental space, emotional space, and physical space all in the same time. So, I mean, an easy super thing that you can do every day is just 10 minutes of meditation, just sitting in stillness and being with all of the things that are in your head and mind, and checking in with your body. All of my rituals in the self care space are body, mind, and emotions. And that's how we kind of keep coming back to the body, keep coming back to the wisdom of the body to check in. And so, yeah, I think meditation and doing yin is going
Yeah.
to help you as a business owner.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't hear many men have done 300, 400 classes, but my husband loves it.
Yeah.
It's the only yoga class that he'll come to with me in Bali,
Yeah.
because it's something about dropping into that state of nothingness, and everythingness. And so that's, yeah, I hope that answered your question. I
No,
kind of waffled a bit.
I'm so glad I asked the question, because I almost didn't ask it, and I'm so glad I did, because I want to talk about it. I feel like getting into the yin space and into the feminine energy, as you speak about, because I, like you, my brain works at like a million miles an hour, and learning to pause has made me a better space holder, probably is the way to say it. Not only for my stuff, but for other people's stuff as well, to be able to just hold space and not change topics when it gets uncomfortable, or not move past something that could potentially be a rabbit hole, and just hold space. And as a result of me doing so many, my morning routine is like, I do every morning, I do a session. My wife started joining me over the last few months, so she wakes up early and joins me on the yin session, which has been absolutely insane, because everyone thinks it's about the body, but it's actually about this mental state that you get into, primarily because we have so much of stuff that's distracting us and stopping us from looking at ourselves, right? And that's what you're talking about, is the checking in part. And the reason I'm asking all these questions about the checking in and how you show up is because a previous version of Ronsley would not even know what showing up meant. Would not even know what checking in meant. What do you mean check in? Like, how do you check in? Like, I know to check in into a hotel. I don't know how to check in with myself. And the reason for that, I suppose, is because I've done a few yin classes that I kind of understand a little bit. Oh, if I'm quiet for a little while, I can actually check in with myself, as opposed to distracting myself. Is that what you see? And is that probably the thing that could help make the biggest difference, is that checking in with ourselves and just being like, if you just start with 5 minutes and then change it to 6 and 7, is that the silence that we
Yeah.
just need?
Completely. I think a lot of people have this like unrealistic expectation that you're going to sit in like lotus pose, in a really uncomfortable meditation position for an hour wearing a white turban and be like connected to God. That it's really like, practicality wise, like, yeah, you may be able to do that on a retreat
Mm,
after a long practice session,
mm,
but practicality is about being able to sit with your stuff and just hold the space for it. And in those moments is when you're really kind of really listening to your body, because we're taught to go at really fast speed, be productive, do like listen to your parents, listen to your teachers, and we start to be programmed into a type of way of thinking, and we really are taught to ignore our intuition and ignore the signs from our body. And like you're saying with like being an athlete, like push past like the hard barriers and like ignore like kind of those bodily signs.
mm,
And so a lot of people do go through life ignoring those signs, and that's when what happens when you start getting dis-ease or discomfort in the body, or you start putting on weight or gain or losing weight, or or your hair starts falling out, or there's so many signs that the body shows us that it's out out of balance and it's out of equilibrium.
Yeah.
And it's normally from stress.
Yeah.
The stress that we put on ourselves, the stress that we put from work, from, from people's opinions. And so, yeah, checking in with your body and actually saying, is this true to me? And asking yourself, am I living in alignment? Does this feel true to me? And when you first start doing this, if you've never done this before, it can seem really overwhelming and scary because it's the first time you're talking to your body or to yourself. But after a daily inquiry, as a practice, you'll start to really know yourself on a deeper level, and you can start to take action and be like, I often offer my clients this because women have different body cycles to men. That men can wake up and go to the gym every day and drink the same smoothie and go to the same workplace and whatever. Females are changing every single week of the month in terms of our hormones. And so I ask them, check in with your body in the morning. Do you need a coffee? Do you need yoga? Do you need to lift weights? Do you need to just sit and meditate? And wait to your body to respond, and then start your day from that place. Because starting your day from like where you are at the moment, because yesterday you're going to feel different to today, to tomorrow, in terms of your hormones, but also in terms of conversations you may have had a late night. So actually getting up, putting your alarm on and going to a HIIT workout at the gym is going to be counterproductive to maybe sitting at home in meditation and skipping the coffee. So you're not running on adrenaline and your adrenals are like really kind of working in overdrive. Maybe having some fruit salad is going to be better for your body, or having a more conscious breakfast than going to the gym and being overtired, and then you may choose bad food. So it's like this vicious cycle of just running on autopilot compared to then checking in with your body every day.
Yeah, 100%. And for those watching and listening, I mean, meditation is one way, silent meditation, guided meditation, breath work. I've been using Othership, which if you haven't come across is a great breath work app. I do it for different things, before a podcast interview, before an ice bath, during different things. And it's really like there's so many more tools these days to help us get in touch with ourselves. Phoebe, this has been an absolute pleasure. Where can people find you and your work, and how can they connect with you?
Of course, everything's on my website, phoebegreenacre.com. I'm Phoebe Greenacre on Instagram, Phoebe Greenacre everywhere, LinkedIn, all of the things. So join my newsletter. I have an emotional healing newsletter on my website. I also have a conscious business tips newsletter on my website. But yeah, if you go to Instagram, everything's there. Have a little snoop around, see if you connect with my message, and say hi. Say that I heard you on the Ronsley show, and drop in and be like, I really love the conversation, because I love being able to create conversations from these conversations too.
So cool. Phoebe Greenacre, this has been an absolute pleasure. A little slice of heaven. Thank you for joining me. And everyone watching, you'll find an edited version of this on the podcast. We'll catch you then. Phoebe, thank you, and we'll catch each other soon.
Thank you. See you later.